A very good evening, and thanks for clicking on to the Friday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. It is getting exciting, and I'm going to talk a little bit more in terms of exactly what I think we may see as we go through next week. The cold air is still to the north of us. That area of high pressure that's been dominating for a good week or so now is now starting to weaken. It's sliding slightly further southwest, and therefore that's going to open the door to not one but two cold fronts, one tonight into tomorrow morning, and the second one, the more important one, is tomorrow night and into Sunday. That is going to open the door to the Arctic from the north. But I want to very briefly summarize the overall thinking to this pattern. This has been highlighted now since the beginning of the winter season, that I thought cold spell at the start of the December would open up to a milder overall December, which we've seen. We've seen a little bit of a flirt of something colder the week between Christmas and New Year. And now we're seeing the return of the cold pattern once again. So the MJO up until now has been a big driver in the overall pattern. It was in favourable phases for high latitude blocking and cold. We've seen that taking place. Then it rotated through the warmer phases of 4 and 5. And I still do think that we will start to see the return of the Atlantic as we move towards the 20th, 22nd of January. But there's caveats to that, folks. It's not all clear cut. There is a different overall setup now in place compared to what we had at the end of November, early December. And I think even as the MJO likely rotates through phases 4 and 5, we have got a very different overall environment now. Now, the thing to remember is we've got a lot more cold available within the atmosphere now. We've got less so in the way of mild compared to even 4 weeks ago. And, temperatures that during the middle portion of December, when we entered through phases 4 and 5, we've seen very, very mild conditions. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as mild as it was mid-December, but we are going to see a relaxation. We are going to see a flattening out of the jet. We will see the return of low pressure and westerlies. But remember what's happening this weekend in North America. Bitterly cold discharge of air down the spine of the United States. That is going to help fire up that jet over the North Atlantic here, and I think that will set the tone for something a little bit different down the road. But I think what we've seen with the Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation, positives and negatives, we are going to continue to see that, I think. And with what's going on within the stratosphere, we are seeing not a top-down, but a bottom-up response between the strong blocking that we're seeing at the moment within the mid-latitudes of the atmosphere. We are seeing that response to the lower stratosphere. It's weakening. It's even potentially splitting the vortex sometime over the next 5 days or so. Modelling indicates that there is a split in the lower portion of the stratospheric polar vortex. So instead of having that kind of lag of 2 weeks after any type of event takes place in the stratosphere, we're already seeing that influence taking place. And I think what is going to happen is we're going to rotate through phases 4 and 5. We're going to see a bit of a flattening out of the overall pattern. The Atlantic becomes more involved. We lose a little bit of the cold that we're going to see over the next week or so. But then we're going to go right back to the blocky pattern and back to the cold. Remember, February, I made the very bold statement with the winter forecast that I thought that February could potentially be the biggest month for winter weather for the UK, Ireland, and Western Europe. And I still stand by that thinking that we could potentially have the coldest February since 2010. And that is a very bold statement to make, and it is something that could come back to bite me. But I do believe with the MJO likely to go back towards phases 7, 8, and 1, which enhances blocking within the high latitudes, Greenland, North Atlantic, etc. But I also think the stratospheric situation is going to become more involved, and I think the MJO and the stratospheric temperature profile, the weakening of the zone of winds, we may still get close to a reversal of the mean zone of winds, by the way. I think all that's coming together to create what could be a very significant month in February. So we'll watch this space, but I think so far things are playing out very well indeed. But let's get to the fundamentals over the next 5 to 7 days. where do I think we're going with this pattern? Is it going to be an impressive spell of cold and snow? That remains to be seen. But I do think we're going to start things off with northerly winds laying down the snow cover across the northern UK, parts of Northern Ireland, parts of northern England. In exposure of that north wind, central belt, you're probably going to see little to nothing, because I've found living in the central belt for a good 20 years, I did find that a strong northerly wind literally leads to clear skies and just cold within the central belt of the country. You have to get into exposure of that north wind, but I think we're going to lay down the snowpack during the early portion of late weekend, early next week, across the north, primarily over high ground, but not exclusively. And then I think as that colder drills south over the UK and Ireland, we're going to then see areas of low pressure knocking the door from the west. That could lead to some interesting things. So this is the current surface pressure chart here, and you can see the weakening and the slight shove to the southwest of the high. That is going to allow 1 and 2 cold fronts in from the north. Now you can see here that we are starting to cool things down over Finland, over the far east of Europe. Remember, several days ago we had bitterly cold air all the way to France, even northern Spain. That relaxed. The area of high pressure has been continuing to feed mild Atlantic air into Scandinavia, and eventually it's now been chipping away at that cold over the central portion of Europe here. But as the atmosphere starts to adjust itself, we're going to then start to see Scandinavia turning colder again. So this is the latest GFS. We're going to look at several models and several scenarios for next week here with regards to the snow potential. The first low that arrives, likely Tuesday and the Wednesday, I'm not necessarily buying into that particularly big. It's not a particularly big event, I think, across the bulk of England and Wales. I think, if anything, it's going to be the far south of England and the north of France. So as we play through this loop, there's the first frontal system that moves through. And then as we progress through the course of Sunday, we're going to see a secondary frontal system move south. And then you've got the perfect situation where you've got an area of high pressure over the North Atlantic. I know it says a low pressure. That really should be a high pressure at 1030 and 1036 millibars, respectively. We've also got an area of lower pressure, actually at 998 millibars over northern portions of Scandinavia. So you follow the isobars, they're going all the way up to the Arctic. So this is a bona fide Arctic air mass that is going to drive south through the course of Sunday and into Monday, and we are going to see the snow start to mount up across the north in exposure to that northerly wind. Then, as you can see here, we have a feature, according to the GFS anyway, coming down from the north, and it's going to enhance the snow potential Tuesday into Wednesday across the northern half of the UK. As that then moves into southern Scandinavia, we're going to then open the door to more cold coming in across the north. So you notice here the GFS, the first area of low pressure of 2, the second one being out over the Atlantic near the Azores, as you can see here. This is Wednesday at 9 o'clock, by the way. And with spaced isobars, you could be talking about some very cold temperatures across the heart of Scotland and into the heart of England here. With lighter winds and clear skies, you could easily get minus 10 Celsius even across parts of England and Wales with this situation. Because that area of low pressure, according to GFS, looks as if it's going to just skirt the far south of England. But we may even see something in the London area, somewhere between Bristol and London, likely to the south of that. And then you notice here the GFS indicates more showers rattling down on that northerly wind. And you notice here that we don't have any other low pressure system moving in behind that feature. This is all the way out the next Saturday, which is a long way out, of course. But if you can get snow in the ground and with higher pressure, remember the 850s don't need to be exceptionally cold, by the way. We've seen that with Scandinavia. Temperatures almost minus 45 Celsius over parts of northern Scandinavia. 850 temperatures weren't even minus 20. So you need the initial shot of bitterly cold air, yeah, within the mid-levels down, but you lay a carpet of snow down, and higher pressure, clear skies, light winds, and the temperature very easily drops into the -10s. The potential is there, by the way, for -15 easily, maybe even -18 towards the second half of next week if the setup is right. Let's have a look at the 850 temperatures of the model. And by the way, that is a cold air mass. So with high pressure and that type of cold air mass with snow in the ground, that is could be quite significant indeed. So let's have a look at the snow depth chart of the GFS. You can see here that we have got a decent amount of snow over Europe. But let's have a look at and see what the UK is looking like in terms of snow depth potential. So you can see here as we play it through the loop, with that northerly wind, of course, you are increasing the snow, especially over high ground. But in exposure at low levels, that air mass is certainly cold enough to lay down the carpet of white. And you can see here that that system moving across, the latest run of the GFS indicates that it's south of the Bristol to London corridor. But you notice here that over London and particularly the south suburbs, down towards Brighton, you can see here that we could see a good several centimetres of snowfall with this type of situation here. And we'll continue to play through the loop, and you've got a pretty decent amount of snow on the ground, especially across the northern half of the British Isles. Central and northern half of the British Isles, I think, in particular. So let's play through the 850 temperature profile here and see exactly how cold the 850s are according to the latest one of the GFS here. So mild at the moment, as you can see. No, let's get back. There we are. So quite mild at the moment, as you can see. Frontal system number 1 moves through tonight and into tomorrow morning. Introduces something a little bit colder. Then it's the frontal system generally between later tomorrow into the first half of Sunday. We've got those 850 temperatures close to -13, -14 Celsius. That is going to drive all the way down the spine of the UK. Then there's an area of low pressure that tries to move in. Then we've got a secondary wave of bitterly cold air that comes down according to the GFS here. So that's quite interesting to see for sure. Let's have a look at the ECMWF and see what it's showing. We'll go to the overview chart first, and we'll see what it's showing with regards to precipitation, etc. So you can see here the deflation of that area of high pressure. In comes front number 1, in comes front number 2. There's the pepper and the heavy snow showers going to continue to drive down on that stinging northerly wind, for the next several days. ECMWF also has that kind of semi-polar type low moving through. Could see a heavy snowfall event in the late Monday, early Tuesday for the Central Belt, for example, into the north of England, scoots out into the North Sea, into the near continent. Then ECMWF, like the GFS, indicates that we have that snow potential across the south coast and the home counties, as you can see. Let's have a look and see what the snow with depth chart looks like on this model. And we're laying down the white carpet across the north with those snow showers. Then that little feature that moves in from the northwest could provide a decent amount of snow through the central belt. You notice here in particular the M8 corridor, we've got 10-12 centimetres through between Glasgow and Edinburgh, which is quite interesting. There's that little covering of snow across the far south of England, and we may fill some gaps in between West Wales, North Wales, higher parts of Northern Ireland. Glenshane Pass may get shut down for a period of time over the next several days with those wintry showers. And you can see here that it kind of waxes and wanes with regards to the snow pack. Interesting how it disappears actually towards the end of the loop. Does it? No, it doesn't. I'm just seeing things there. Let's look real quick. UKV model here. Skip through the sequence, and you can see here the bitterly colder arrives from the north. We've got 850 temperatures well into the -12 to close to -15 range, in fact. Looking at snow depth of the UKV, and you can see here that we increase the snow quite substantially as we progress through the course of next week in particular. And then it's all eyes on that system, the far south of the UK, during Tuesday into Wednesday. How cold are we talking? Certainly over the next couple of days, nothing to write home about. It's really once we progress into later Sunday and Monday Daytime temperatures, particularly across the north, struggling to get above freezing, multiple days below freezing in some places. Overnight temperatures -8 to -12, quite likely. Like, share, and subscribe.